Доброго дня, шановні пані та панове.
Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olena Kondratyuk. I'm very happy to welcome everyone who found time and inspiration to come here together with us at Ukrainian Women's Congress online. Coronavirus pandemic created new realia and challenges that we have never faced. World is changing rapidly. The General Secretary Antonio Guterres called inequality the world problem number one. Discrimination, racism, social inequality, unequal access of women to decision-making, education, low incomes, another 100 million people who can suffer from poverty, wars, human rights violations are the biggest challenges of today. The UN Secretary General called upon an unprecedented step, creation of new global treatment against inequality. Of course, Ukraine cannot be aside from these processes. We have to understand that our country, is very sensitive to all those challenges. 1 year ago, Ukrainian people hoped that when new authority will come, new faces to politics will come, the politics will go to the new qualitative level. People expected better well-being, new level of political culture, social guarantees, respect to human rights and dignity of each and every person. However, these hopes, I think most of them failed. More than 60% of Ukrainian people believe that Ukraine goes in wrong direction today, not in the direction expected. We expected that there will be less of sexism, gender-based violence. However, we see that there are more and more cases when women are humiliated based on their gender. We have 30% more cases of home violence, Russian aggression. The first signs of political crisis and local elections are those challenges that will determine how Ukraine will step out of coronavirus crisis and economical crisis. That's why we decided to hold Women's Congress sooner. This is pre-meeting before the bigger Congress, and of course, due to the new reality, we are having this Congress online. We have to have a very open conversation about all the challenges that Ukraine is facing now to find effective solutions to the problems our women are facing. Objectively, those are Ukrainian women. Those were Ukrainian women who were hit by coronavirus because about 82% of women work in healthcare. Because of pandemic, cultural sector, education and social services suffered most, and most of the workers in these sectors are women. Of course, everybody also thinks about local elections, and due to decentralization reform, the local budgets will be adopted and the most important decisions will be taken on the local level. The decisions that will influence the life of each and every citizen and their families. So in Ukraine, we have almost half of the population are women, and there are not so many women in charge. In the local councils, we have less than 20% of women, and now, due to the new decentralization reform, we think about the representativeness of men, equal representativeness of men and women. So we have gender quota, 40% of representatives of one gender in election lists. We want to engage as many women as possible to take part in the upcoming elections, but we see a lot of challenges, unequal financial opportunities, fear, uncertainty, and confidence. That's why I call upon all the organizations, CSOs, Central Election Committee to do everything to implement this 40% quota, to enable our women to use their constitutional right to elect and to be elected, to enjoy their right to take part in state affairs. And believe me, we all will benefit from it, and the state will benefit from it. I would like to thank cordially all the participants of the 3 discussion platforms. I would like to thank to our constant partners who take a lot of efforts to support Ukrainian Women's Congress. I am also thankful to the organizer, Interfraction Equal Opportunities, and all men and women that make this event possible. And we want women to believe in what they can, because new reality means new possibilities. So everybody, you are welcome to take part in discussion, and I give floor to Vadim Karpiuk. Vadim Karpiuk, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Helena. I'm very honored to open the first discussion. I'm Vadim Karpiuk, and I'm TV host of political talk show Freedom of Speech on ICTV channel. So we are in my native studio, and I'm very happy to announce that the first panel discussion will be dedicated to the subject that I'm interested both as political journalist and as a citizen. It's the subject about the upcoming local elections this year, and we all wonder, will there be more women in politics due to this election? So we will discuss what stops women from joining the political process, and we have wonderful speakers for this panel. Mr. Oleksiy Zhmerenetsky, Member of Parliament of Ukraine, Victoria Sumar, Member of Parliament of Ukraine, Ukrainian Solidarity, Inna Sovsun, Member of Parliament of Ukraine, Golos, and Olha Ivazovska, the coordinator of political programs, chair of the board, City Network Opora. It's maybe one of the biggest and most serious organizations in Ukraine that are following the electoral process. So, also we have our international guest from USA, Michelle McGroarty. Ex-political advisor, Emily's List. I hope Miss Michelle will be with us during the next 30 minutes, so we will also ask her about her impressions on the discussion. Also, we hope that during our conversation, Doris Pack, the president of EPP Women, and Viola von Krammen, a member of European Parliament, will join us. They sent us their video speeches. And a little announcement before we start for all the guests who joined us on Facebook or YouTube. You can ask your questions as well. And closer to the end of the panel, I will ask them if there will be some interesting comments or questions. They will be given to me, so you can write them right under the in comments under our broadcast. And now we will start with Doris Pack, president of EPP Women. So,
hello, everybody. In this difficult time of pandemic, we all learned women leaders in the world managed it the best. Not America, not Russia, not UK, but Germany, Taiwan, Iceland, Finland, Norway, Denmark, New Zealand, all run by a woman. The challenges after the pandemic are for women leaders in politics the same as for men. Stimulate economic recovery, fighting unemployment, improvement of healthcare systems, access to internet for all young and elderly people. But we also should help all our cultural actors, because without culture in all its forms, our lives will be poor. We women should be the driving force in politics for more respect of the women who took the biggest burden in pandemic, in hospitals, in nursing homes, in homeschooling and caring of kids and making household and having at least also sometimes home office for their business. It was really a hard time for most of women. On the local level, women were very good organized sometimes. They created networking for all needs possible. A lot of our EPP women were involved in overcoming locally problems of all kinds. After this time of their engagement, I think this will not be forgotten. We EPP women have, in this moment, in high positions, very good leaders. We have Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor. She is now also President of the Presidency of the European Union. We have the President of the EU Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen. We have the Vice Commissioner, Dubravka Šuica. We have another Commissioner, Maria Gabriel. Both are Vice Presidents of the EPP Women as well. You see, women in the European People's Party were heard. We reached progress in a lot of fields, and therefore I think we should continue. The quota system, but also will be installed in the Ukraine election, I have heard, is a good thing, but there are a lot of other things to do. There are the question of work-life balance, family-friendly businesses, equal pay, fight against gender-based violence. Women in conflict zones must be heard. For example, I ask you, how many women are involved in the negotiations and diplomatic endeavor in East Ukraine? I myself learned becoming a trustful politician, being a councillor in my city for 8 years. Here I was close to the needs of my co-citizens concerning childcare, schooling, sports and cultural activities. One must listen, must discuss, must act, and then coming back with or without result. People must see and feel that they can trust you. My experience on the local level was the basis of my work on national and international and European level as Member of Parliament in the German Bundestag and 25 years in the European Parliament. I myself never faced problems being a woman in politics, but I saw these problems too often. I fought with the association of my party against those tendencies, and we still do it. You women in Ukraine, you should use the local election in October to show your dedicatedness to the needs of the citizens. Don't be anxious to present you as candidate. You are as good as men, even often better suited because you are closer to the roots in your city. It is the future of your country, of your kids and grandkids, which has to be addressed in the best way ever. You can do it. You must do it. Make your voice heard. A British famous female politician, Mrs. Thatcher, said once, "Without women, one cannot make a state." This is more than right. We are half of mankind and should have equal chances to make this world better, without corruption, with a justice system which works, with equal opportunities for all. Believe me, it starts local. Engage you. Thank you and all the best.
I thank Ms. Doris Bach for this very motivating speech, and the president of EPP woman wing was with us, and Ms. Doris said that she heard something about new quotas available in Ukraine. So the first question is for those who heard something but maybe doesn't know exactly what it was. I would like to ask Ms. Ola Ivazovska. So could you explain, please? Lately, Verkhovna Rada adopted the changes to electoral legislation, and according to this legislation, on the 25th of October, the elections will take time. Could you take part? Could you explain about these quotas? Well, for the first time in the history of Ukrainian elections, this gender quota is not formal but fixed legally, because the political parties will have to file the documents, and the stage of the registration of the candidates, there should be quota already in the list. The proportional system is spread on the communities starting from 10,000, and from the list of the documents, from the requirements to the electoral list, there is a requirement of 40% quota of different genders as the smallest proportions. This means that in each 5 candidates, per each 5 candidates, in the communities from 10,000 people, it should be 2 to 3, either 2 women, 3 men, or 3 men, 2 women. And this proportion should be kept for all the lists, because people in their ballot will see the name of the political party they can tackle and the list of the candidates from 5 to 12. And out of them, they will have to select the number of the person who they want to support. That's why proportion and quota is very important in all the lists, local, city, territorial. And in this territorial list, the citizens will vote for, where they will give preference to a certain person. Formally, these lists are called open. However, the candidate should get quota of election quota. This is not the gender quota. This is the weight of one mandate, and not less than 1/4 of the weight of the mandate should be earned by the candidate personally. It will be done when people will be voting for per person. So the list will not be registered if the gender quota will not be present in the list. So that's why it's quite a big challenge for parties now to find not less than 40% of women to register them as candidates. And in the communities that less than 10,000 people, there should be 30% quota. But the quota is not very well protected there. And you can also find some pros and cons in any situation. As to cons, the lists are more closed due to this duty of a candidate to get not less than 25% of the mandate weight. On the other hand, it protects the gender quota, because party is obliged to put people in the list according to the quota, and if it will be done, then people will receive guaranteed quota of 40%. Well, frankly speaking, it was quite complicated. There were a lot of mathematics. Well, elections are purely mathematics. Money, votes, and results. Let's step aside from emotions. I understand that women have to be inspired to take part in local elections, but I think each of us have to understand that no one will invite you, but the party has a need to have women, to have good, ambitious women, to have clever women. And this is a window of opportunity that has to be used, and women has to understand this. So we will ask these questions to the representatives of the party. So Alexei, you are the representative of Sluga Narodu, and you are also the member of Equal Opportunities organization. So how your party is going to ensure the participation of women? Yes, I also would like to speak on statistics a little bit. Well, actually, in small councils and village councils and small community councils, the tendency was rather positive, more positive than in Verkhovna Rada or in city councils. The gender quota at the level of villages, was implemented actually. And we don't have problem that we don't have ambitious women. This is not the problem. The problem was that the lists were formed by men, sponsors and donors were traditionally men, and when we had some issues about big money, when it comes about big money, we see less women. So the higher the level, the more men are there, the more men who are trying to solve their issues. As to this draft legislation, it addresses one very important component of freedom, so-called negative freedom. It opens the doors, but whether a woman will step into these doors or not, here we will speak about the positive freedom. Does a woman going to do this or not? So I'm a majoritarian myself, and I know local situation very well. I'm forming the lists.
Right now, we have our information campaign. We select and engage women to become MPs of Ukraine, because, as you know, we have to stick to the gender quotas. We know that we need to spread equality in all spheres, from social and economic to gender sector. The questions are more to other parties, how they are ready to stick to achieve those quotas. Well, I just want to understand, for example, you carry out your information campaign. Where do you carry it out? Of course, I'm not a target audience of this campaign, but I haven't noticed any targeted campaign anywhere in Ukraine. Well, of course, you are not the target audience, that is why. Okay, so I would like to comment on that, to comment the welcoming words of my colleague. It seems to me that one of the biggest achievements of Equal Opportunities Caucus is that we haven't politicized the topic of gender equality within the past year. We don't need to mix gender with ambitions of separate political brands. Taken back to elections, regional councils, district councils will be nominal. So, as you know, we don't have to take a look at the quality of the party list, because their key functions will be to transfer the different property to the balance of the local parties. What do you mean by that quality is not important? How do we know that? So this is a question of the property of those councils and the budgets. It's difficult to say what kind of situation will happen in these councils. In some councils, the task will be just to transfer the property on the balance of those councils. So right now, I think that the key fight will be on the regional level, city level. We will have to select women for regional councils, because we have the biggest problems with representation of women in regional councils. How do we do that? Any regional unit of our party, office of our party, we carry out interviews. We receive a number of CVs from different women, and we organize so-called job interviews with potential candidates. We tell them how to find support, how to find funding before the election, because, as my colleague has already told you, one of the biggest problems is resources. Single-seat constituencies and representative offices of our party help to women to find those resources. So, as far as I understand, local councillors now act as facilitators who help communities implement those things that were not within the mandate of those councillors before. Okay, well, now I get it. Inna Sovsun, also an MP of Ukraine. As a question to you, how your party, Holos Voice, is planning to increase gender quota, though you have quite a lot of women in your party. As an MP of Ukraine, as a deputy head of the party, I would like to say that, of course, this question is very relevant to us. Though we are a party which has one of the highest representations of women, the head of our party is a woman. I'm a vice head of the party, and we have another deputy head of our party who is a man. We have 16 women registered as heads of local administrations, and our pre-election office is also headed by a woman. So at the level of our party, we don't have problems with gender quotas yet, right now. But we know that when we will create lists locally, we will have similar problems. Not because of the structure of our party, but because locally women are not always ready to engage, to take part in the election process. When we speak to those women, they are shy, they are afraid to face bullying, to face different problems, because statistics shows that women in politics much more often have problems with bullying, with different problems, harassment, and so on. That is why a lot of women don't want to run for election. I would like to tell those women who are watching our conference, quoting what Olga Ivazovska said, political parties really need women right now. They need them much more than women might need political parties, because they need to achieve those gender quotas. They need to find those women. At least 2 of the 5 candidates shall be women. Though in some regions we would like to do vice versa and have 3 women and 2 men. We have people locally who are ready to do that. But there are still a lot of challenges, because women are very often afraid, they are not confident, and they have all their right to be afraid, because they often confront different challenges. It's much more difficult for them to find money, to find funding. They know that their families might be bullied or discussed or observed. And of course, this is what we need to change in the political culture generally, and not only at the legislative level. But the fact that we have those quotas is a huge step forward. At every meeting with representatives of our regions, I tell them that elections are about creating party lists, finding observers, representatives of local commissions, but you also have to work with women separately, specifically. In order for our representatives to remember about that, we organize a lot of trainings on how to work with women candidates. We are very grateful to NDR Ukraine that helps us with that, because we know that it is a bit different, it is a bit more difficult to prepare a woman to run for elections. That is why we have these separate series of trainings. At our office, party office, we have a person responsible for this particular direction. We want to make this work systemic. So you organize trainings, you use the scientific and methodological approach to selecting women. Okay, Victoria, European solidarity. Do you have a special strategy to engage women, to attract women? Well, yes, we have additional payments for achieving gender quotas. But now I would like to say a couple of words. I would like to start with the fact that thanks to organizers of the Women's Congress, because I remember that this Congress is held for several years in a row, Ukraine has made a huge step forward in setting equality between men and women and in setting equality in politics. We need to admit that. It makes that we can achieve something by doing that. These decisions change our reality. That is why we must have more of decisions like that. Secondly, the economic crisis due to coronavirus crisis will affect women more, because first of all, it affects those spheres where most of the employees are women. That is why they will face the problem of unemployment. And secondly, in Ukrainian realities, women are always worried whether they will find time to feed their children. That is why it will also impact them psychologically. It seems to me they shall have this motivation to go into politics. Even at the highest level of parliament, it is necessary to talk about the employment of women and, depending on that, to make decisions to introduce gender quotas also in the employment sphere. Going back to the elections, Olha was right saying that elections are purely mathematics. Parties that have the highest rating won't have any problems with achieving those quotas. It will be much more difficult for those parties whose rankings are not that high, because they need to select candidates who have a lot of money they are ready to invest into their campaign. But as Alexei said, we don't have to mix the gender equality principle and politics. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, politics is still very sexist. This is our realities. All of women know that, see that. We have had a lot of scandals, a lot of fights in the Verkhovna Rada, all those sexist quotes by MPs of Ukraine about those expressions that were used. It seems to me that male politicians say that women shall do all the work, to work in the regions, to work at different levels, to do actually all the work. If you take a look at the roles of women in politics and in different fractions, well, not all the fractions, I would like to praise Holos fraction, because it seems to me they are very serious at involving women in making decisions. In our fraction, we fight for involving women in decision-making process. We fight for our position. But I'm not sure that in the mono-majority of Ukraine we have the same situation. I think they know more about it. But I feel that they have more men and they make decisions using this man-led approach, and this is a problem because female politics is a bit different. Our colleague from Germany was right, asking about how many women are involved as negotiators in Donbass. We understand that without female moderators, it is difficult to find common language because women's position is very important. They are more eager to find compromises. There are a lot of processes in Ukraine where women are involved as actors, actresses, puppets, and there is always a puppeteer who tells what to do, what document to sign. Everyone understands that usually those puppets are women, because they are easy to influence. Well, of course, there are a lot of men among those puppets too. I agree with you, but this is more about equality. Summing up, I would like to say that right now Ukraine has the chance with the upcoming elections. They will become one more step towards decentralization, which means that a lot of decisions will be made locally. That is why gender quotas are very important. It means that there will be more women at the level of communities. I hope that we will have more women heads of the local communities. There will be few of them, but I hope that there will be much more than before. There will be a lot of secretaries of the local councils, because we really need that. There is a demand for that. It gives me hope that at least at the level of communities, policy will become more socially oriented, that a lot of attention will be paid to schools, kindergartens, I hope that there will be more women in politics, which means that even at the highest level, there will be a growth in the number of women. Okay, but we all agree that we need to involve more women in politics. Now I would like to ask Michelle McGrorty, our colleague from the US. She's here with us. Hello, Michelle. I would like to ask your opinion. Please tell us about the experience of the US. Are there any special programs or organizations that are involved in trying to persuade women to be involved in politics, not only locally or at the all-American federal level, but also locally?
Absolutely. And thank you for inviting me to be here. It's an honor to be with so many esteemed Ukrainian colleagues. I'd like to say that there are definitely organizations in the United States that are focused specifically on engaging women in political office. We have an organization that I spent many years working for called Emily's List, which specifically works to elect women to office from the Democratic Party. There are other organizations that are focused on different parties, but the organization called Emily's List is the largest resource for women in politics. And what we do at Emily's List is recruit, train, and support women who are running for office at all levels, from local to national office. And it's really important to have these groups that focus specifically on women. And the reason is because, as my colleagues have mentioned, there are unique challenges that women face running for office that are something that men do not face. There are some issues that are unique to women in terms of their feelings of confidence level in themselves and their qualifications for office. Well, we know in reality there are actually not a difference between the qualifications of women running for office and men running for office. There's an issue where women feel a lack of qualification. And so one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we're intentionally recruiting these women to run, and that we're training these women and we're giving them the tools they need to be successful. Part of my job when I worked for Emily's List was to recruit women to run for office, to ask them to run, and to encourage them, and not only get them to agree to run for office, but help them all along the way, step by step, providing the training and the support so that they can be successful. One of the things that we found in the United States is after the 2016 election, when we failed to elect the first woman president, much to the surprise of many of the people in the United States, there was a huge backlash among women. And women in the United States organized marches all over the country. There were hundreds of thousands of women marched and they mobilized. And in 2017, immediately after the election, we saw a huge increase in the number of women who were interested in running. And so we had women who were mobilized, they were helping each other, and they were willing to run and do the hard work necessary to run. And they had the help of organizations like Emily's List and other organizations that provide the help that they need. Now, NDI is also a resource in Ukraine and in other parts of the world for helping to ensure that women have the skills, the training that they need to overcome the unique obstacles that they face in running for office. And I would just like to add that this is an incredibly unique time in Ukrainian history for women. Like what happened in 2018 for women in the United States, 2016 provided the momentum for women to fight back against the sexism from Trump and Trump's administration. They mobilized. Women ran for office. They did polling and research to see what messages were most important to women voters. They communicated those messages directly to women voters, and they won. At this point in Ukrainian history, we have an opportunity with the new gender quota to have some momentum. And so we need to build on this new gender quota that will promote women being put on the party list and be putting high on party lists so that they can actually be successful in their run. And also, we have the opportunity of COVID. COVID obviously has tremendous challenges for women running for office, men running for office. But with these challenges comes an opportunity. Women uniquely have the ability to be legislators who build consensus and can be successful in getting the job done and delivering results for their communities. And so we see that the nations with the best response to COVID are led by women. Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, Angela Merkel in Germany, and the list goes on. And that is because women work across party lines to deliver for their communities. And the local elections are so important because right now, the feelings of COVID are happening in local communities. People are feeling it, medical workers, school teachers, and others. These are communities where women are very much in tune with. So it's a great opportunity for women to get in and fight for their communities during the global pandemic.
Thank you very much, Michelle. We just discussed that actually starting from the local level, the politics of the national scale will grow up. But now I would like to concentrate on what Victoria has said. You said Ukrainian politics is rather sexist. We will not try, to say that, well, maybe it's not like that. Yeah, it is sexist. And there is a problem why women really are reluctant to be engaged in politics. What kind of problems are those, and how can we solve them? How can we address them? Name one or two problems that are the most pressing, Oля. Why women are reluctant to be engaged in politics, even if they are competent and they have everything to do this? Well, first of all, it's a stereotype artificially created, but it's supported by a lot of women as well, that a role of a woman is different, and something like politics, public work is not for women. And women always, they don't use this opportunity windows that are being opened from time to time, like now, for example. And I will give just two pieces of advice how to use the window of opportunities. The parties will be looking for weak women, those who will after the election day will refuse from their mandate to be replaced by men. Of course, I remember year 2010 when the members of parliament were taken to the local councils, and then after the election days there were a council in Vinnytsia, and several dozens of candidates announced their refusal from running the further campaign. So this gender quota should be not only on the stage of registration, but during all the period. So the woman should really be able to receive the mandate finally, because there will be this challenge, because we might face the situation when people come and say, okay, we comply this quota requirement, and now we have, different tasks, and we have this very good man, and thank you very much for helping us to show the compliance with the quota, but we will offer you some other position. The woman who is running, she has to understand that it will not only be some domestic sexism, but her role will be diminished at every stage, including the day after the elections, when people will try to remove her. And why we don't have many women in politics? Because politics is corruption. Corruption means money. Money are more available at certain level and certain business environments by men. That's why women as a human resource was not needed to parties, it was not needed to electoral process, but woman is highly needed to the society because she represents certain social groups. She has unique roles. These roles shouldn't be stereotypic roles. A woman should decide herself what kind of role she wants to take in life. but she might have very high competences, higher than men. So you have to be very self-confident. You have to be ready to go till the end, to receive the mandate, even if your party tells you not to take it. Sexism is not the banal issues of opening the door, giving flowers, or congratulating. Politics is about money, and money play a key role. And while we have corruption in politics, there will not be proper access of women to politics. But we have to fight, and we have a lot of progress. Great. And statistics shows that female political campaigns are actually cheaper and more effective than men political campaign. Well, sometimes they are less successful, yes, but we speak about those campaigns that were effective. So, could you comment on sexist politics? Yes, I would like to say that the problem is not that politics is sexist, but Ukrainian society as a whole is a sexist society, and politicians are just the mirror of the society. So what should we do to address these problems? We had several initiatives, legislative initiatives, to address the issues of women access to politics. For example, we developed the draft legislation on maternity leave to give more opportunities for men to take care about newborn child as well. Ideally, all the maternity leave could be split between man and woman. And if a man doesn't use his quota, he doesn't receive support. So the money will motivate men to step in and to take care of children, and his wife will have more time to do something else, including politics. Also, there is a draft legislation to put the administrative liability on sexist actions and sexist speech. And we have to do something both against men and women, because women sometimes also do the sexist speeches, not only about men, but also about their women colleagues. During this year, our fraction reacted very quickly to all sexist sayings of our colleagues, and we here didn't think like this is our person, this is not our person. We treated everyone equally, and we have always said that it's in improper behavior. About changing the culture of the society, I think it's the biggest challenge. And this is a long-term goal. When we say that statistics on gender equality goes down, I will say it's a little bit manipulative, because you can actually measure such changes in 5 years or in some other long terms. When certain legislation starts to influence behavioral patterns, when people transform their mind, this time people just act but then when it becomes a habit, then we can say that something has changed, the politics has changed. Thank you very much. So you suggest systematic work with society as well. And now, what prevents women from being more active? Of course, stereotypes Ola spoke about, and sexist culture Alexei mentioned. It's, of course, something that we are observing currently. Of course, our society is very sexist, but the question is whether the political leaders should be the reflection of this society, or should they demonstrate new values? And my position is like this. Yes, we have a lot of sexism in Ukraine. We see the statistics that most of the people think that women's role is take care of the house and children. Yes, we have this in Ukrainian society, but at the same time we have a lot of changes. There are a lot of people who think that the share of people who think that role of women is 100% house and children is decreasing, and we have to speak about it. It's very important, because very often we see that women, also women in politics and high positions, who are heads of big companies, enterprises. After this, they're afraid to say that they face sexism. They're afraid to admit that they actually had to face a lot of challenges on their way to the top. When you face sexism, when you're a politician or in any other sector, and I learned from my own experience, you should have to be brave enough to react publicly. When someone tells you something and you know it's sexism, you have to speak up. Don't smile to this person. Don't act like you didn't understand. Just say, please don't do this anymore. This is inappropriate. This is unacceptable. It's 21st century. Please leave your ideas behind. I think it's very important because otherwise we will never overcome this problem, because we will say, Ukrainian citizens are like this. Well, maybe they are like this right now, but let's suggest them, let's propose them other model of relationships between men and women, of roles. And I think there will be a lot of people who will agree, because most of the people actually want both for men and women to be able to realize their dreams, their opportunities. And it will be for the better for the society, for politics, for our children. And I think if we speak directly, if we speak openly about this, we will have a major breakthrough. There will be no breakthrough because if we will step back all the time. Because we will think like, if now I will say that I was oppressed as a woman, and they will not take me seriously. No, if you will step forward and you will say, yes, this happened to me too, they will take you seriously. Just say, this behavior is not appropriate. Don't be afraid to speak. Don't be afraid to be a subject. So, Victoria, what is the problem? What are the main problems? So, speaking of sexism, whether I experience this or not, I think every woman experienced this. It's rather hard. Yes, if we have an open conversation right now, but we remember this story that happened lately, when people were saying that she came to politics through a bedroom, and I think nearly every woman in politics at some point of her life faced this attitude. When a woman politician gives an interview, you can try to read the comments. And just read the comments below this interview, and there will be a lot of comments like, what this chick can know? I don't know what is this. Is it some inferiority complex of a man? Is it a society stereotype? But this is the discourses we are living in. But each woman that goes to politics, she understands that she will be hit psychologically. And even she will be hit by the society, and she will be hit at home. And we have to speak openly about your family as well, because your mother or your husband will say, look, you are at work from all the day, and your children are raising up without you. What kind of mother are you? You know how many times I heard this, how many times my colleagues, women colleagues, heard this. My daughter respects me. We built these relationships with her, and she understands my role, and I always told her, you have to value yourself, you are value, not only a man. Yeah, I will be very happy if you meet a man who you like and you will value each other, but you are value. And when you make career in politics, you propose decisions, a lot of decisions, and you do a lot of great things. But you will, sooner or later, you will hear, but actually, well, you cannot think strategically, or you cannot be in charge of this department. It's very difficult. And, yes, very often women are just actresses, and real story happens behind the stage. What should we do about this? I think every woman knows answer to this question. We, together with Ms. Alena Kondratyuk, were working in the Committee of Freedom and Informational Policy, and you saw who was speaking on these committees. Those were women. Now I think Alena is the most professional person in Verkhovna Rada Presidium. She knows the rules of procedure and everything. How do we fight sexism? By being stubborn, by being professional, by being hardworking, by constant improvement. We just have to go on, and then people will take you seriously. Thank you very much. And now another video in the beginning of conversation, Viola von Krammen, the member of European Parliament. Now we can...
I'm very glad to address a little supporting statement to all women in Ukraine. Why women and why Ukraine? Because in my experience, I've been working in Ukraine since '96 now, the lack of women in politics is significant and is a big, let's say, problem also. So I guess that your Congress could be a push for women on all levels to be more involved, to feel responsible, to take not for granted what they have, but to fight for more and to build up alliance, to work on certain topics, to come together on the local level, on a national level, but hopefully also on the European and on the international level. When I look back into my political life or my career, I always just did it. I never asked anybody whether I would be the right person to do so. But for my experience, and when I've talked to other women and other female friends, I noticed that many of us are very uncertain and they do not live up to their own expectation. They are never satisfied with their own, let's say, efforts. And that's a big problem. And we always want to be perfect. We always want to be the best prepared for meetings. But that's not necessary. Men never do this. Men never ask anybody whether they are good enough for the jobs. They just take over without any competences sometimes. So I think it's now our time to grab for power, to work together, to build alliance, and to really empower ourselves in a different modus than we have done before, and not to ask anybody whether we would be the right person or the right woman to do so. I can just tell everyone that your voice is needed, especially on the local level. It is so easy to grab certain topics, to help mothers, to work on kindergarten and school equipment, just ordinary things which make a difference for young families, for young women, to make up their careers and to improve their lives on the ground. I think this is really important, and men in politics will never take care of this. And there are other things which are also important when it comes to female structures, and I see there's a big lack, especially in Ukraine, when it comes to, let's say, energy politics right now. I mean, what do we see in Ukraine when you look through your country? This is still a very old-fashioned, a very centralized approach. And there are new approaches, there are new methods, there are new systems. And most of the people who work on this decentralized approaches, who work on new methods, are women. But since we do not have enough women, we do not have this newer and modernized approach, especially, I would say, in energy politics. It's very crucial for the future of Ukraine. I could name other subjects such as climate and others, where we need female voices, where we need female engagement in national politics, such as Ukraine, but also on the international level. And that's why I really, really apply to all of you, not to ask anybody, not to wait for anything, but just do it. Go ahead. Take your chance, take your opportunity, ask your friends to join you. Look for, let's say, the next elections, look for proper, let's say, movements or lists or groups where you feel yourself confident with, or otherwise just do something new. Your community will be very, very grateful if you become involved. Thank you so much for having me only digital now. Hopefully next time we will see and meet in Kiev and Brussels or somewhere else. All the best.
Депутатка Європарламенту Віола фон Крамон. Я обіцяв коротко ваші запитання. У нас насправді дуже мало часу залишається, тому що так завжди з хорошими розмовами, коли вони починають бути хорошими, вже на них завжди бракує часу. Але все-таки є кілька запитань. Я попрошу дуже коротко, якщо шановні панелісти знайдуть можливість відповісти на них, то я ось продиктую, тому що от перше було запитання, на яке я звернув увагу. Багато було розмов, ну як умовно, багато про гроші. Збільшилася кількість застав.
There were a lot of questions about money, so now we have time for Q&A session. Very briefly, will women be able to take part in the election when we have more pawns? Yes, in the communities up to 10,000 people. Yes, there will be bigger amounts of money, but compared to the second draft legislation, now we have a historical moment. The code is published, there is a signature of the president, and we understand according to which rule it's gonna be done.
And this cash deposit is much lower right now. It's 9 times lower, thanks to the opposition fractions and to the majority party, to the fraction majority. Thanks to them, 18,800 hryvnia. So this is the amount that the party will have to pay for every 90,000 of voters. If in a community there are more than 120,000 voters, then they will have to pay more for each candidate which runs for in single-seat constituency. There are also deposits for potential mayors, but it also depends on the number of inhabitants in a community. Another good news is that women don't have to pay this deposit separately if they will be on the list where the gender quotas are met. So thank you so much. Unfortunately, we didn't have the chance to to talk about impact of COVID-19 pandemics on the election process in Ukraine, and of course it will have impact. This is what Mr. Lashko, our head sanitary doctor, said. But we will be able to discuss this topic during our next panel, which will be called Men and Women in the Pandemic Context, how to meet the needs and create safe living environment. And now I would like to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for supporting our Ukrainian Women's Congress online, especially thanks to support of the National Democratic Institute in Ukraine, UN Women in Ukraine, UN Development Program in Ukraine, Gender-Oriented Budgeting in Ukraine, Foundation of International Election Systems, IFES Ukraine, Olena Pinchuk Foundation, and Coca-Cola Ukraine. Our informational partner is traditionally Starlight Media. Thank you so much. We'll see each other at 12 at our second panel discussion. Have a nice day.